Righty ho. It's time to go, Sue. Okay. Schism. Now, why schism? Well, I've no interest anymore in the wider intellectual debate because there's almost no hope at ever having any deep dialogues with anybody who can just sit back and figure what is the nuance, what is one about. Anyway, identity. It's the most absurd word. 5 or 6 years ago, I thought, right, it is time to change my name to Ralph. And that is based only on love. Love of one man at least. It was so gentle, caring. He noticed everything, and yet a big ogre of a man. Ogre is the wrong word. A big, huge bear of a man. And he gave me so much time over the years. Right. Okay. And actually, so I started up I've been trying out for 5 or 6 years, several Ralph email addresses and accounts. I've got Art of Ralph, but in parallel with thinking of let's just call it a handle. It's a handle, that's the best word. In parallel with living, trying things out, living, I've dealt with a lot of artists, and I've realised, well, I knew this a few years ago, but it's even more crystal clear now. Forget ever engaging with an artist. Ever. So, schism. Now, why schism? But this is deeply important. So, once you get middle-aged, I think there's only really two things that really matter. Now, of course, what matters are things like, yes, family, having a functional relationship that doesn't drain you with your family members, yes, and mutual support through all of that. Of course, that matters. And if you have ended up, or rather, quite innocently, it was 10 years ago. I had a choice. No, it wasn't. It was 9.5 years ago. I met one woman who was more my equal, my kind of person. And for the first time in 3 years, at that point, I fell in love with her. And I encountered her a few times over the next 6 months. I mean, she really was. It was my complete and utter new start in life. She knew. She kept her distance. We would only encounter each other at a particular cafe, but very few people went to that cafe, and she knew. Anyway, 6 months went by, and I chose somebody else who I wasn't in love with. Right, that's ancient history, but having a partner is critical. These decisions are very, very difficult. And you can't overthink them. You have to I went with somebody else, not having been with anybody for 3 years, and it seemed like a weird choice at first, and it was the right choice. Love, or rather functional togetherness, really did grow. Proper mutual support. Anyway, that couldn't last, and there were completely innocent reasons for that. Her mental health, as it happens, which was she needed to get dealt with, and I'm against medication for the most modern intellectual reasons, and it was never a discussion we had. But later on, she wasn't on any medication during the 3 years that I was with her. She was with me, we were together. But later on, a few months, 3 or 4 months later, others smugly pushed her onto medication, and I saw it so damage her. She didn't need to be. Anyway, let's keep to the point. Schism. Schism. Now, I think it's a word. If you put it in on your blog site by Blogger, they kind of put you behind a barrier. It's a slight irritation. Now, I'd rather call myself Ralph Nomad, because that's a gentle, fluffier, true. Well, it's not fluffy, actually. It's hard to be a nomad, but I am totally a nomad. But I decided on Ralph Schism. But anyway, to get to the point, schism. Now, schism, of course, has a dictionary / Wikipedia, which is always a kind of bizarre neoliberal version, actually, of words and history. It equates the word with something quite fierce, quite cutting, and no. This is what a schism is. And why schism? The only schism that I wish to focus on is in two things. I've forgotten what the first was. Well, the only schisms that matter, if one wants to care for the planet, light footprint, there's no more. I've known this and I've lived it for 15 years, but it really is time to be completely and utterly authentic. I mean, one international flight a decade, probably, that kind of thing. Yeah, one doesn't have to be an absolute purist, but I need to write well about this. But the schism must be those who don't waste the resources anymore and don't use chemicals. Just the smallest little bit of chemical input into your life, of course, it's not the end of the world, but largely keeping that stuff out. That's a schism. That's the kind of schism I'm interested in. But then there's a more interesting but related schism. And do you know what? I'm going to make part 2 of this.